And I sometimes say things like, this is the chair that you're going to be going into a trance in, so just make yourself comfortable in that. Presupposition, you know, there are chairs where a person can go into a trance, and this is one of them. There are several others in the room. So what I'm going to invite you to do in just a moment, just lay your hands, so they're comfortable there. And what I'm going to invite you to do is to lift that hand up and hold it up in front of you, like that. So just do that, hold it up in front of you, yeah, thumb aloft. And I want you to look at that thumb there. And as you look at that thumb there, I'd like you to notice the tiny movements, yeah. Already, there's tiny movements, because I'm going to invite you to hand it over to your unconscious. So you've got a conscious mind, and you also have an unconscious mind. So as you sit here listening to me, yeah, those movements continue, sure. And it's interesting. What I'm going to invite your unconscious to do is to select something, some piece of work that would be valuable and appropriate for you to work on in a trance state. Now, I'm not going to invite you to do this consciously. I'm going to invite your unconscious to select that certain something to work on. And you may not even know consciously what it is, but your unconscious will know. And if your unconscious is willing to do this, I'd like it to signal yes by beginning to lower that hand slowly towards your right leg. And if no, then it will rise up. And that hand will not touch that leg until the appropriate level of trance has been reached and the appropriate piece of work to do has been chosen. So yeah, as you continue to pay attention to that thumb there and notice your breathing in and out as it continues to move down. You can just, yeah, hand it over to your unconscious. That's right. And you might even want to close your eyes and allow yourself, yeah, to engage fully with the process. That's right. And I'll talk to these guys as you do that. Now, did you notice, as AJ was sitting there looking at his thumb, looking at that thumb there out in front of him, that there were sort of like movements like that? This is one of the great things about it. You'll see those movements. You know, I challenge anyone to hold their thumb out and keep it completely still. It's just not going to happen, so there's always something to notice. And then what I did as AJ made those little movements and so on, or noticed those little movements, I would just comment on them. And what I'm going to suggest is I'm going to say, AJ, you will not find yourself taking a deeper breath and returning to consciousness until that piece of work has been completed for now. So I'm saying that he's going to remain in that trance until such time as that piece of work has been completed, at least for now. And that when it's time for him to come out of that trance state, that he'll know that because he will notice that a deeper breath has been taken, a deeper, longer breath. And so we can just continue to talk and chat and engage while he's doing that. Isn't that interesting? So the idea that you have a conscious mind, you also have an unconscious. And so this idea of handing it over to the unconscious. Now in the language I used the language of dissociation. So I said, I want you to raise that hand up and look at that thumb there. I didn't invite him to look at his thumb. I said, look at that thumb there. And notice as that hand notice the tiny movements that it makes. And then, yes, I acknowledge them the moment that they happen. And as that hand there begins to move, and so on and so forth. And I said to him very specifically, I don't want your conscious mind to do this. So I was saying to him, you don't have to do this consciously. In fact, I want to really let him know that his conscious mind is off the hook, so to speak, in terms of having to having to do any of this stuff. I'm really inviting his unconscious to come to the fore, to deal with what's immediately in front of him. Is a form of language I might have used if I'd thought of it. So AJ is going to take all the time he needs to process that, and we'll know when he's completed that processing because he'll take a deeper, longer breath. Now, I don't know exactly when that's going to happen, but what are some of your thoughts and ideas as we look at this process and we engage in this process? What are some of the things you guys are thinking about? Well, I don't know. And when AJ's back, sort of back in the room, so to speak, as Kenny Craig would say, you're back in the room. Yeah. We can ask him. Certainly, my own experience, a lot of the time when I'm in a trance state, is I can still hear stuff going on around me. It's not like I'm, being coshed or anything like that. I can still hear stuff going on around me, but it's sometimes a little bit background. That's right. Sometimes a little bit background, or I'm more absorbed in something that's going on the inside. But we can certainly ask AJ about that when he comes back out. What else? What are some of your other ideas?
I saw something happen and responded, but I think it was beyond my consciousness to know what it was.
I noticed that AJ took a deeper, a slightly explosive breath. I went, and so I was just letting him know that I'd noticed that. Because one of the things when it comes to doing hypnotic work is the kind of message I send to people when I'm doing hypnotic work is something along the lines of, I'll take care of what's going on out here so that you can feel free to attend to what's going on the inside. And so I want AJ to know that I'm noticing the stuff that's going on. Now, on another level, this is no different from if we're doing a piece of work and I'm introducing the group or whatever, and we hear a fire engine go up by outside or a door slam, I'll comment on it because it's just incorporating, a process of incorporating what everyone's hearing. It's a way of letting you guys know it's okay. I'm comfortable with this. I know what's going on, and I'm letting you guys know that I've noticed. So AJ's taking deeper breaths now.
Does everybody stay on the chair?
Well, if anyone were to ever topple off, I'd grab them, but I've never had anyone topple off. And this is an interesting thing. On the one hand, a person's going into an altered state, and it can seem like they don't know what's going on. But in fact, the unconscious is, taking care to ensure that everything's, being done appropriately. And that includes staying on the chair. So for instance, I remember, let me see if I can remember there was a case where they were hypnotizing people, trance subjects, to walk across a room and to negatively hallucinate a chair that was in the middle of the room. And so the interesting thing is they could tell when someone was faking or not, because the person who was faking would walk across the room and stumble into the chair. The people who are actually in a trance state and negatively hallucinated the chair would walk across the room, swerve around the chair, then when asked about the chair, they'd say, "What chair?" Because it wasn't there. But their unconscious wasn't about to have them stumble into something that wasn't there, because that would make them, be an issue with their sense of reality. So, what are some of your other thoughts about this process of, welcome back. And if you like, you can just close your eyes again and allow yourself to reorient to the here and now just a little more slowly. Yeah, that's right.